Clive Cussler fans and other browsers who may be dropping by to see us on Facebook. This is Barbara Peters. I am, in fact, Barbara Peters, and I'm really delighted to be able to converse with Robin Burcell and her new book that she wrote with Clive called The Wrath of Poseidon. So, Robin, does it feel weird to be doing this without Clive?
It does. It's a little bit surreal right now. Just, I mean, he's always been there, and I don't think I ever realized that one day he wouldn't. It's very surreal.
Well, I have to say, it was a tremendous surprise to us too. We always knew we would lose him someday, but it was so sudden. It was really a tremendous shock, and I think it was hard for all of you, to have him suddenly gone. But you had a chance with this book to do a full collaboration with him.
Oh yes, yes. I'm actually very fortunate, and we came up with this idea about. Well, it was right after we finished the last book, The Oracle, and I said, I've got a really kind of cool idea. I'm not sure if it'll fly because with Clive, you never know. And I said, what if we write the story about when Sam and Remy met, how they met, and what happened in that adventure? Because it has to be something really cool. Sam and Remy, of course. And he loved that idea, and so we kind of started batting it back and forth. And as is usual, I flew out there and we batted it back and forth some more, and had a great time. And surprisingly, and here's it's kind of an interesting story. When the first book I did with Clive was Pirate, that was 5 books ago. It's hard to believe it's been 5 books. And so it was my daughter just walked into the room. Thank you.
Worse
Doors
if it were
closed.
your
Everything.
worse if it were your dog. We actually did a whole event with an author about 10 days ago, and the dog was in the room, and there were these bizarre sounds. All of us wondered what in the world was going on, and finally, luckily, the dog got up and walked across behind the camera and out the door. We're all going, "Ah, it was the dog."
Oh my gosh. I've got 2 of them out there. They're so far being good. Fingers
Yay!
crossed. So, but anyway, back to the pirate story. I got distracted, obviously. So, I came from, and a lot of people might not know this. My very, very first book was a romance. It was a time travel romance mystery, When Midnight Comes. And then I did this series, if you remember, the Kate Gillespie series, which was sort of a romantic suspense, I guess. I mean, it was really more suspense with a little bit of a dash of romance thrown in there. And then the next series, the Sidney Fitzpatrick series with Face of a Killer, was no romance whatsoever. Well, I mean, there was love interest, but so I have those are my roots. So I remember Clive talking to me about working on Pirate, and one of the things that he was interested in was getting this, a stronger female point of view, and so I started doing, my thing, and he gets it, and he's reading this, the manuscript, and he says, no, we can't have this. He says, I don't want to lose my male readers. And I'm thinking, wait, what? And it was kind of one of these things where the robe, they were in their hotel room, and the robe slipped. It just showed her knee. I mean, it wasn't all that risque or anything, but he X'd it out. It's like, okay, so no romance. So now fast forward to book 5 in The Wrath of Poseidon. Sam and Remy are meeting, and um, having learned my lesson from book 1, no romance, even though it's kind of their romance, how they met. And it's like Clyde's upping this stuff, and they're kissing and thinking about things, just, romantic things. It's like, whoa, whoa. He says, well, it is a romance after all. So I found that fascinating to see how he kind of shifted when, from the first book to this last one. They've come full circle, I guess you can say.
That is interesting, but one of the things that was so wonderful about Clive always is that he evolved. You knew what you were going to get basically in a Clive Cussler book. It became a brand. But at the same time, I think that when he decided, because I remember the conversation I had with him, it was the end of Trojan Odyssey, and we went out for lunch or something or other, and he said to me, you know, I want to keep writing, but I can't do this much heavy lifting anymore. I think he was, I don't remember, maybe in his mid-70s, maybe my age, something like that. And the books had gotten so big, and the weight, you know, of the research and all the rest of it had grown exponentially if you go back and look at his earlier books, which were more compact. And so he said, you know, what do you think if I, you know, took on a co-author, and then, you know, I could keep going, but I could share the workload. And there was already a pattern for that. I mean, we all know about Patterson, you know, for years. We didn't realize that he had co-authors, but then it became a thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and so why not? You know, the template already existed. And if I remember right, the first co-author book he did was in fact with Dirk. It was a Dirk Pitt, but I might be wrong. Paul Comprecos was writing very early. I think it was the Numa Files, and then
Right.
that eventually became, today it's Graham, right? And then Jack DeBrule was in and out. There were 2 or 3 other authors writing the Oregon Files. And I'm trying to think who it was that originally did. Clive did the first Isaac Bell, and then I think Justin Scott wrote quite a few of them. And
Right,
then,
until Jack came back.
yeah, and then Jack, because Boyd was then writing the Oregon Files, you know, Jack came back and wrote an Isaac Bell book. And, you know, so really the Remy and Sam, I think, are the most recent, aren't they, of the...
Yeah, I think so. There's, what, 12 books now? I mean, I seem to be catching up. So, um, because there was Grant Blackwood,
Right.
and then Thomas Perry, and then Russell Blake, and now me. And I think, you know, as Clive was testing these authors, I mean, you know, I'm sure it could have gone just fine with Grant Blackwood, but the voices changed significantly when Thomas Perry started. I mean, he's a completely different type of writer, and Russell Blake, I'm not familiar with his writing at all, other than with the Fargo books. But one of the things that was important to Clive, he felt that it got a little off track, and he wanted to bring it back to what the original was. And I'm not Grant Blackwood. I can't write like Grant Blackwood, and I'm certainly not Clive Cussler, and I can't write like him. But what I can do is complement Clive's writing, and so hopefully that when, you know, somebody picked up one of our books, it would seem seamless. And but there was, you know, there were some holes in the stories where one co-writer would start doing one thing, and then the next one who came in started doing something else. And I had the advantage of having read all the co-writers in the Fargo series, of course. And so I felt one of my jobs was to kind of bring them back together again, if that makes sense, and pull in some of the loose threads that maybe another one co-author didn't pick up and run with, you know, certain explanations that were, I think these Sam and Remy-isms that were established in the first 3 books with Grant and Clive, I tried to bring those back, and then some of the little things that the other authors had brought, you know, Thomas and Tom and Russell. So I feel that, you know, the last 5 books have been a good blend of it, but back to what you were saying, that Clive has evolved as a writer, that's absolutely true, because I think what he was doing with the first 3 authors, you know, we had this learning curve, he and I, writing together, and so I had to kind of pick my battles, if you will. It's like, okay, no romance, and I promised, you know, it was funny because he wanted Remy to be stronger. He felt that Remy had kind of lost her way between the 2 previous co-writers, and when he and Grant were working on it, and he wanted a stronger female. So first version of Pirate Man, I gave him a strong female, and he's like, oh, no. He said, Remy cannot outshine Sam. You know, Sam's the hero. Remy is, yes, she's the heroine, but but you've got her too strong, so I had to pull her back. And so I've got to keep that in mind with each successive one. So now, again, fast forward to Wrath of Poseidon, and all of a sudden, it was, oh boy, when I talk about some of the things that Clive put the big X through, we were trying to decide how Remy would be before she met Sam. You know, she has to be similar to what she is now, but she has to have grown. You know, she can't have come out fully formed Remy Fargo. So, you know, we had the first version was she was just Remy, and you know, I'm reading this and I'm talking to Clive and I said, I don't think this is working. I said, I feel like Remy can't have just come into this relationship already badass. You know, she has to have grown because of her time with Sam. And so we had to kind of dial that back and start over again. And then, you know, I'm not sure how familiar you are with a good romance, but in a good romance, there's usually this clash of characters, you know, when the hero and the heroine first meet. And so I tried to put that in there, and it's been a long time, you know, at least, what, 15 books since I've written a romance. And so I had Sam and Remy clashing. I was like, are we allowed to swear here? Because Clive said, she's a bitch. We can't have Remy being a bitch. So I was like, okay, you know. So I had to dial that back. And, you know, and then go back to, you know, some of her history, which has been established in the first book, was that she, you know, she went to Boston College, and, you know, what her major was in the shipping and ancient trade routes and whatnot, history. And she's, you know, this language expert, and she did like some sword fighting, and her father, I think, taught her to shoot or something like that. But she also knows a lot of other stuff, and, you know, throughout the books. So we kind of had to put that in there, and I decided that what was one thing that we established, that she wasn't the expert knife thrower that she is in the previous books, because this is before they were married, when they first met. So it was kind of fun putting in, you know, these things and watching Remy kind of turn into who she is now. Sam, other than the fact that he was probably never planning on settling down with somebody like Remy or anybody else for that matter, you know, so he grows in that way. But Sam's still Sam, and Remy, it was fun kind of watching her
Well,
evolve.
one of the points I guess I should make was that, you know, Clive had just written Clive books up until the end of Trojan Odyssey. And when I said he's evolved, I think it was inevitable that once he started doing other books in what I call the Cussler verse with other authors, then inevitably there was going to be development in each of those series in different directions. And he would have to work with, as you've just described it, you know, you or another author, and create these characters and decide, you know, how they would be. And then as the co-authors have changed, you know, inevitably there have been some changes with that whole branch of the Cussler verse. But if he hadn't made that decision with Trojan Odyssey that he would take on a writing partner, there wouldn't have been this opportunity to have these, you know, different aspects of the Cussler universe. And that's what I think, you know, has been terrific to watch, and an interesting contribution. As you know, I've been here for the whole thing,
Yes.
with all the authors and so forth, and I've been fascinated watching how each co-author has stepped in and how each series has developed, changed, gone back. But Clive has always had, as you say, a really clear vision of what he thinks a Clive Cussler book is, even if it isn't a Dirk Pitt, even if it's some other characters. You know, in Clive's mind, his books have a very definite pace. They have, you know, the reader knows what to expect from a Clive Cussler book.
Exactly. They know. Yeah, there is in the Cussler verse. You know, you're going to get a rip-roaring story. It's going to have a happy ending. You know, it's going to end in, you know, not necessarily a happily ever after as much as an upbeat, because there's still going to be bad guys out there, and we know they're going to come back for the next book. Maybe not necessarily the same bad guys, but there's always a high body count. And but I think one of the hallmarks of Clive's books is that he's always thinking of the reader. And for him, it's not what he wants. He says he thinks about what it is that the reader wants. And I think that's kind of one of the things that have made his books last for so long. So, when we look at, even with my previous series, they were 4 and 5 book story arcs. And it was the story that I wanted to tell for that series. But then they tend to die off. And Clive's have never done that. His just keep new readers and the stories topping the next one. And it's not easy to top the previous book as far as adventures and how to get them out of a situation. It's a challenge. And I think that's what I like the best about it is when you're writing it, it's like, okay, how can Sam and Remy get out of this sticky situation? Their lives are at risk, and without doing it the same way you did it in the last book or the book before or the book before. And so you have to be clever, and then you start thinking about, well, what would Clive say? And Clive would be saying, what does the reader want? And the reader does not want to read the book that they just read. They want something new, something better. And it's like, you have to stay on your toes.
Well, I was just going to say that. It really kept you on your toes. So before I let Dirk join us, I think that Bryce entering the waiting room may well be Dirk, disguised as one of his kids or something. I will give us like a couple of minutes of summation of Wrath of Poseidon. And let me say to those of you watching it, because of this pandemic that we are in, we did not get an advanced reading copy of the book. And all our copies are currently destined to land on Robin's doorstep on Tuesday and then shipped back here. So we won't have them until the end of next week. So that's why you don't see any here. The publication date's actually Tuesday, but it's probably going to be the end of next week before we get our copies in and can send them out to you. But anyway, give us a couple seconds here about the story, and then let's let Dirk in.
All right. Well, basically, as anyone who's continued with the Fargos knows, they met at the Lighthouse Cafe in Hermosa Beach. And so this is the story of that meeting. And from there, Remy is on her way to Greece to work with an underwater, the Forney Underwater Archaeological Society. And I actually traveled to Forney, which is in Greece, a little archipelago of islands tucked away in the south, and stayed there and worked with this underwater society as research for this book. It was a Clive Cussler fan who came to your store and bought a book, and Janaea Buckingham, you recognize the name from the book, and she said, hey, you guys should set a story in Greece. And so I said, oh, don't offer unless, I might take you up. And she goes, no, I'm serious. It's like, So I asked Clive, I said, what do you think about setting a book here? And he thought it was a great idea. And so we came up with this story. And for, some of the Cussler fans who have been longtime fans, which aren't many, there are some Easter eggs in there. And a few nods to Clive's first book, Mediterranean Caper. So we had a great time doing this and adding these little tidbits and weaving Mediterranean Caper in there. It's a small thread, but it's a fun thread for the fans who recognize these things. And once again, Remy goes off to Greece, and she gets in a little bit of trouble. Sam goes off to Greece to rescue her, and but the story starts off in present day, and Sam and Remy are going to visit somebody who's going to help them look for this lost treasure that they had hoped to find on this adventure when they met. And so the person who's asking them about what happened says, well, tell me what happened. And so they said, well, it happened back, when we first met at the Lighthouse Cafe, and that's the adventure. So it's a full circle. It starts in present day, then we learn about what happened, and then it ends in present day. And both present days are a very, very small part of the book. So it'd be like this much, and then this much of the book is the adventure of how they met and what happened, and etc.
Well, it's wonderful that you guys. That was very coherent. I'm really delighted that you got a chance to finish the book with Clive. I don't know that readers realize just how long it takes to get a book written, and then it gets edited, and then it goes into production. So it seems very new to you, but the truth is it's been out there in that process for quite a while. So Clive was able to have his fingerprints all over it. All right, let's see if Bryce is actually Dirk. Oh, where'd he go? Oh, he went away. I may have to call him. Well, right. So carry on. Say something while I see if I can retrieve Dirk, who was supposed to be in the meeting room, but has probably given up on me. So hang on. You talk while I find my phone and call him.
All right. One of the fun things I have about Wrath of Poseidon is when Clive and I were coming up with the final battle scene, and that was a lot of fun. He wanted an underwater battle. Hi, Dirk.
There he is.
Oh, there he is.
You saved me.
Hi. I was just going to call you to see where you were, but here you are. And it's a Dirk with a whole new hairdo. You have to join with your audio. Right. You need to join with computer audio.
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, can you hear
There
me
you
now?
are. Yes, there you are.
All right. I have my daughter helping me out here, so she's the resident Zoom expert. So
Tell me
I'm
something.
still trying to catch up to speed here.
Were you lurking there as Bryce?
Yeah, that's my daughter.
Oh, good. I was a little worried about clicking on it and finding some complete stranger suddenly in the middle of this event.
Photo bomb.
I should have given you a heads up there.
Oh, well. Anyway, it's lovely to see you, and I was complimenting you on your new hairdo, which is actually, it looks more like mine than you.
I know. I'm in Connecticut here, and they still haven't opened the barbershop, so I got another week or so to go before I can get a haircut.
It looks good, though, Dirk. Very debonair.
My COVID due, I guess.
It does look good, and in point of fact, it makes you it makes you look more like your dad.
I've heard that before, so maybe
It's
that's
true.
not okay.
Yes, how interesting. So Robin and I just wrapped up a brief summation of Wrath of Poseidon and all, but I thought it would be interesting for you to. Oh, good, you have a copy.
Nice.
Yeah, I know you don't have any. I've got to show everybody the cover. I just read it this week. Great job, Robin. A lot of fun. It was really fun going back to see the backstory of Sam and Randy. So,
Thank you.
So catch us up with, tell us what's going on with, you are wrapping up Dirk Pitt, right?
I am, yeah. My father always used to say finishing a book is sort of like getting out of prison, and I feel like I just got my get out of jail free card because I've got a full draft done and just going through some editing process with it right now. So manuscript is at least in one piece, and doing some fine tuning right now, and then hopefully we'll get it out the door here before too much longer.
When is it scheduled to publish, Dirk?
That's a good question. So tentatively November, but as you probably know, the publishers I think are a little nervous with so many bookstores closed. If you could hurry up and open up the Poison Pen and get some other stores open, then
we never closed.
Are you still open?
We are open. We have been open the entire time. But what we did, this is my new favorite New York word. We have pivoted. Pivot is the new verb. We pivoted from being open to everybody to being open virtually. But, we were always that way. This is actually not any different for us.
Oh, really? Oh, good.
Yeah,
okay.
we've actually hired an extra person because business has been so good.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's good to hear.
It is good to hear, and as a part of the Cusslerverse in our own way, we've been really thrilled to keep it on. Graham had a wonderful response to his March book, Journey of the Pharaohs, and ended up selling a lot more copies than we had planned, so we had to keep sending him books.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah,
good
it's great. And Robin has a whole ton of them dropping on her doorstep. And well, I'm hoping Tuesday, so we'll get them back.
UPS man's gonna love me.
Right. I hope you have a lot of packing tape. But you know, one of the big questions, Dirk, is who's going to be the traffic director in working out what's going to happen with the different aspects of the Cusslerverse and the different authors.
Yeah, we're still kind of working through that process. I've been busy trying to finish the Pitt book, so I've been leaning on our agent, Peter Lampak, quite a bit right now. And of course, we've got a lot of help from the editor at Putnam as well. So, at some point, I probably will sort of slide into that role and maybe a little more forceful than I have been so far, and try to help kind of keep things scheduled and so forth. But we're still kind of feeling our way through that process right now.
Well, then we know for sure we'll get a Dirk Pitt book at some point, if not November, possibly then in March of 2021. I know that Boyd is finishing up the sequel, which is a necessary sequel to Final Option, since it was conceived. Boyd and Clive together conceived it as a two-part deal, 2 books.
We have to find out about the new organ. So absolutely. And Boyd's, he's like 2/3 the way through that. So actually, we've got a lot in the pipeline right now. Between Boyd, Graham's got, he's well along on his next book, and so is Jack DeBrule for that matter. So actually, there's a lot of manuscripts in the works at the moment. So I'm not sure when they're all going to hit the stands, but we do have some books and some titles that will be coming out.
That's really exciting. It was Robin and I were talking earlier about when Clive first got the idea of working with a co-author, and then how it's branched out like it has. And now you have to wonder, what fans expect. Do they expect all of them to continue, some of them to continue? And then what do the authors expect?
Well, I'm sure everybody wants to keep writing. And we'll have to just try and manage that process. I mean, obviously, it's a huge loss without his creative presence there. I mean, his input was just brilliant on all of the titles. So I think for the writers, everybody's going to have to step up their game without his guidance, and see where it goes. I think the good news is that all the co-writers have good experience. I mean, they've worked with Clive for a number of years. So I think everybody's got a good feel, maybe a good sense of what his expectations would be, and hopefully that'll kind of keep driving some new titles, new books as we go forward.
Can you give us a little preview of the Dirk Pitt? Like a couple of shout lines?
Yeah, sure. Part of the inspiration was kind of geographic. We hadn't done anything in the Himalayas, so we've actually kind of got 2 kind of split plots. Part of the story takes place pursuing an ancient Tibetan idol that has some ramifications for the Dalai Lama, and so we've got some good little action scenes in the Himalayas. And then another portion of the story takes place in the South China Sea, where Pitt is pursuing a Chinese hypersonic missile that crashed in the ocean, and that leads to some other nefarious activities. So it's tied together, hopefully at the end a little bit together. Go from there.
Well, with world realpolitik moving back over to an Asian theater, this plot line...
That's true.
This plot line may be more relevant than we actually thought.
Perhaps it.
Scary thought. Let me just check with Pat. Do we have questions, Pat?
Danae Buckingham wrote...
Can you move over?
Oh!
Because I don't think they can hear you. So we have some fan questions.
So, Robin, Danae Buckingham mentioned that it was such an unmatched pleasure to get to know you and show you around the island and work with you. She commented on the fact that your depth of research and dedication to these books is exceptional. Can you describe your research a bit for us?
I didn't even pay her to ask that. Well, for that book, I had in mind that treasure underwater. One of the things Clive wanted to make sure that we did was not have the same treasure as somebody else. I remember one time Dirk and I were working on a book around the same time, and he says, "Oh no, you can't have that because Dirk's got that," and so trying to keep these things a little bit different. And so we went around to the various islands and lots of photos and ate the food and tried to keep it very authentic. So there just wasn't enough time though. I would have loved to stay there for another couple of weeks. But this book, The Wrath of Poseidon, was meticulously researched in Greece so that the plot would work.
I can say after having read it, I really felt like what a great place to quarantine on a Greek island. I mean, everything sounded so good, right?
Right. Yes.
But that's interesting, and I'm sure that when you're managing so many books, that keeping overlap is a big problem. Dirk, you ran into that with the last book where you were in Egypt, but then it turned out Graham was also in Egypt, so you had to kind of move out of Egypt into a different world.
It gets hard. It does get difficult. Not only that, and just I think like Robin touched on earlier, not sort of rehashing some old plots or even some old action sequences. When there's so many books out there, it does present a challenge. So no doubt.
Yes.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to keep a running tally of who's doing what. Sorry, PK, another question?
Yeah, they want to know if will Clive continue to make cameos?
Will Clive continue to show up in the books sort of like Alfred Hitchcock in the movies? Will you write him in?
Well, he is in the next Pitt book, I can tell you that. So.
Excellent.
Otherwise, everybody's really excited to see you guys. Boyd says hi. Just lots and lots of viewers from all around the world saying hello to all of you.
Isn't that wonderful? I love that. Right, so do you remember, Dirk, you were the first, right, of the first co-author book was the Dirk Pitt book?
No, I think it was the Organ Files. A fellow named Craig Durgo had written 2 of them, and I think that was at least he had at least one of those. I think before I started working with Clive on the 5th book, so it might have been more. It might have been 2 actually.
In fact, if I remember right now, I should have done my research before we talked. I'm sorry, it's been that kind of a day. Craig and Clive actually did 2 nonfiction books together, right?
Yeah.
Correct. The Sea Hunters.
Right,
Yeah.
and Sea Hunters 1 and 2. Looking for, was it the Hunley, the Confederate ship?
It's actually a whole series of different expeditions, but the Hunley is in there as part of the books, yeah.
So one thing, you and Clive spent a lot of time going to North Yorkshire to, where is it, Hull? Somewhere.
Whitby.
Right. The Dracula, in fact, the home of Dracula, right?
That's right. They have a great abbey up on the hill there that it just is so atmospheric when you see it. Hundreds of years old. It's half abandoned. They have a great graveyard there with these ancient tombstones. And there's a scene in Dracula where I think he jumps off the boat in the form of a dog or a wolf and runs up into the cemetery. And I think he even bites a woman there or something. I forget. But you walk through there and it's like, wow, this is it. It's the real deal. So yeah, it's a very cool place.
It'd be fun to have a Dracula sort of story at some point in a Cussler. But what were you guys doing when you were? Because I know Clive actually set up Numa as a foundation, right, in order to do some exploration and fund some research?
It started back in the late 70s when he got involved in a search for John Paul Jones's ship called the Bonhomme Richard, which sank during the Revolutionary War after a battle with the British off of Whitby, off of Flamborough Head there. And that was way back in 1978, 79. And that's how Numa got started. And of course, he proceeded to look for dozens of other shipwrecks over the years. Some he found, some he didn't. And unfortunately, that one that started it still hasn't been found. So it's on our radar list. I hope to go back again someday and make another search for it. But after all the wrecks that he's found, it was kind of a shame that the first one that really got him into it wasn't able to locate it.
That's true, but he was fairly philosophical about that. I remember talking to him, and he felt that Maybe the wood, it had just drifted so far, been so buried, that it might just be forever elusive, or maybe not even there.
It's possible. We've covered an area. We searched an area, I think, the size of Rhode Island, literally off the shore. So it certainly hasn't been by lack of effort on our part to look for the thing. So it really is a mystery at this point.
What's going to happen to Numa as a foundation?
Well, I think we can continue it. Same thing. We've got various projects come along at different times. I know there's been a wreck down in Texas we've had some interest in too, and of course, the one obviously the Richard we'd like to go back to. That's a little more costly of a search just because of the logistics over there. But with the changing technology, maybe that helps too. So we'd like to keep Numa going as well. So we'll keep after it.
I've always loved the fact that Clive translated his fictional Numa into a real world Numa with a real mission, and funded it. Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely. It's just so typical of him, to have made something real that started out as fiction. I loved it. Robin, I know in at least one of the Sam and Remy books, there was a whole thing with antique cars. I think it was a book Tom Perry wrote in the series where they were, if I remember right, going across Siberia or some such thing, and actually ran into Clive. But have you used, the car, Clive's passion for collecting cars and?
Yes. And the Gray Ghost, it actually opens at Pebble Beach. My daughter actually worked for the Pebble Beach company, and I know Clive's shown some cars there over the years at the Concours d'Elegance, and so I opened up the Gray Ghost at Pebble Beach, and it just seemed fun to do over at my daughter worked at the inn at Spanish Bay, and so had to get that in, and some of her coworkers, a little bit of adventure before the story moved on to another country. So that was the first time I've ever really used any specific cars. And I'm looking them up on the internet trying to find out, okay, what cars does Clive own? And he bought a fire truck and some other little car. I can't remember the little car. But I was actually with him when he bought the fire truck in his office. It was online. And he, I thought, oh, this would be fun. Let's put this in there. And he used that to break down the door when Sam and Remy get trapped inside, and it was a lot of fun. So yes, we've used the cars.
How about you, Dirk?
Oh, of course, that's a staple. Now this, actually, I have to say, this the last pit here was a little difficult, just because of the locale. A lot of it took place in the South China Sea, Himalayas, so I had to get a little more creative. It doesn't take a major role, but there's an old vehicle that shows up in the book.
It's hard to imagine a Clive book without it. What's going on with the Cussler Museum in Colorado? Your sister Terry, I think, manages that museum up there. Is she planning to keep it open?
Yes. Unfortunately, they're still closed right now up there. I think they're looking at possibly opening later in the summer. They're kind of gauging things up in Colorado right now. But yeah, she and her daughter's been working there too, and they love it. So hopefully that keep that rolling as well.
They are really fabulous automobiles. I thought one of the nicest, I think it was last September or October, Clive was able to go with one of his cars and participate in one of those great British, drive. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's
the London to Brighton run.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was able to do that, which it's great that he was able to stay active and do all those things that he loved right up to the end of his life.
Yeah, he was wandering off to car shows all over the country, so he never lost the love of the old cars.
No, but he also thought of them as a really good investment. We had that conversation a couple of times, and maybe it's like people who collect art or put their money in gold or something. He really felt that he knew cars, and he could make not just a fun thing, but a shrewd investment out of them. It'll be interesting to see, now that the world's changing, it'll be interesting to see what actually turns out to be a good investment.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Yeah, he hated the stock market. He never put a dime into traditional investments, but he wanted to have something to have fun with, I guess, along the way. So.
Absolutely. Pat, any other questions?
Yeah, actually, we've got a great question from Australia. Chris Hayward asks, for Robin, will Remy have a child in the future? And Dirk, what's happened to the twins?
Wow. You know, you just never know. I mean, we know that Dirk Pitt had children, and who knows, maybe they'll pop up in some book, fully grown, fully formed. And, I'm not really sure. You know, they've thought about it. They started thinking about it in, I think it was the Romanov ransom, and you know, there's a great kind of baby banter between them, and the ticking clock and everything. So. I guess you should never say never.
I don't know the
I see it now that Sam and Remy will have twins, right? It'll be Sam Jr. And...
Right, Sam. Oh my gosh, God help them. I have twins, so you know, that would be really fitting for them, I think.
I'm trying to envision Clive being okay with you writing Remy through a pregnancy. I just, you know.
Well, I have some experience with that at least, so.
No, it's not that. I just think that he'd probably prefer that the whole gestation cycle took place outside a book.
No, yeah, I think you're right, and you know, hence the joke about having them come out fully formed in some book, already grown up, you know, knocking at the door. Hi, Dad. Hi, Mom. So.
It'd be like Athena springing from the head of Zeus, fully formed. You know, that would be the image. Dirk, have you ever found it confusing that, you know, there's Dirk Pitt Sr. and Dirk Pitt Jr. and then there's you, Dirk Cussler?
Oh yeah, I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? There's just too many damn Dirks around, that's for sure. So it's always a battle in the books. I mean, I try to write it that Pitt says for Pitt and then Dirk says for Junior, but I'm sure people picking up the book find it confusing. Yeah, that's serious.
Well, and then your name's on the cover on top of it. It's not like Dirk is a common name either.
Yeah, everybody must think I have a giant ego, I guess, but it's really not me.
No, you were not. You didn't vote on what you were named.
Right.
All those times ago. Anything else?
Yeah, Danae Buckingham wants to know from both of you, what aspects are you most proud of in your recent books?
What was the question?
What aspects of your recent books are you the most proud of?
Oh.
You've already kind of answered that question, so maybe we should ask Dirk.
Gosh, that's a hard question. You know, you get to a book, and I'm at the stage now where I've been through it about 3-4 times, and it creates self-loathing, I think, the more I go through a book. You find things that you're not happy with that you thought were great the first time. So I don't know. I think probably the scenes in the Himalayas. I think I had fun with that just because that was a new area. Did some research on Tibet. I mean, that's always the fun parts of writing the books is doing the research. So hopefully some of that showed in some of the action scenes in the Himalayas. But I'll leave that for the readers to judge.
Well, go ahead.
I wanted to add to that because for me was that I started talking about it a little bit earlier, the underwater scene. And when Clive and I were plotting it out, we were using olives. We were sitting at the table on the patio and moving, you know, olives around. And because I was trying to explain my idea, and Dirk, you must know this, when you're trying to explain an idea, taking it from your head, sorry about that. I'm not sick. I have, you know, lung issues that were here way before COVID. So, and yeah, so we're, you know, it was like the little shell game with olives, and I said, no, you know, so they come down from the ship and they think that this is going to happen, but really what, you know what it is, getting the idea out, trying to explain it, and I feel like, wow, okay, we actually really did this.
Well, it is a challenge to make the landscape, to make the story fit the actual landscape. And also, I was going to ask you, both of you, you know, it's hard to keep a balance between the landscape of the book and the characters in the book, and then all of the history and so forth, as well as the plot, you have to juggle all of that as you're moving along. Do you find when you're going back through it that, you know, you've like overdone one section and you have to edit some of it out, or write more of it in?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, usually. I was going to say it's always the former. You find yourself overwriting. At least I do anyway. You get wrapped around certain scenes maybe, and that you just go overboard on it, and you know maybe you get caught up in the excitement yourself as you're writing. And overdo it, excited. So it's.
Are you both still there? We froze for a moment. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, Robin, what would you like?
Yeah, I have to agree with Dirk. It's the tendency to overwrite something. The one scene in Wrath of Poseidon where Sam and Remy are climbing down a cliff, and Sam's trying to tell Remy how this is going to work because they have a very short length of rope and it's a very long cliff. And he says, "Yeah, we're going to use the Texas rope trick." So I look up the Texas rope trick, you know, to figure out how, because I'm pretty sure this is a thing, and sure enough, it's a thing. And I must have had a page-and-a-half explanation already written as Sam's telling Remy how this trick's going to work. And the trick for writing this stuff is to let it sit for 2 or 3 days and go back to it. I go back to it. It's now about 2 sentences. But it started off as a, you know, a good page and a half or 2 pages of explanation. So, yeah, overwriting is a thing.
You probably have to learn it yourself, and then you have to figure it out, write it down yourself in order to pare it back to, you know, to what the reader. It goes back to your point that Clive was always good at knowing what the reader wanted. And the reader
Yes.
probably didn't really want a whole page and a half description of how to use the short
No.
rope. You know,
No, stuff I needed to know, you know, to be able to get that sentence and a half, but you've got to be able to recognize that the reader doesn't need to know it. So, yeah, but I was pretty proud of that sentence and a half.
I can believe it. I know, Dirk, your books have a lot of technology in them, or at least some of them do. And you like that, clearly. You seem to enjoy writing it, but is that a challenge for you to make it so the reader can understand it, but you don't go overboard with it?
Absolutely. I've been trying to understand it myself because I don't have a real scientific mind. So I get into things and I'm like, okay, you know, and part of it, you know, you do take some liberties with it being fiction as well. But that's true because I think as you write in things that I don't understand, I try to write it out to help myself understand, and then you end up in that same paradox where you've overwritten the whole thing, and the reader doesn't care about the details; they just want what it represents.
Well, Clive had written so many books, I think it came naturally to him, you know, and he was able to just kind of work out the pace of the book, as we call it. It must be harder to come along in his footsteps and try to, you know, to get to that same rhythm.
I'm not sure that rhythm is so difficult. I think it's just trying to be original. I think with the storylines, and do something that hasn't been done before, or do it in a different manner, and then still make it as entertaining as possible.
Pat, anything else?
Yes, somebody wants to know if the last few cars that Clive was working on before his passing, will those be finished?
The question was for the last cars that Clive was working on having restored before he died. Is that going to go forward? But they were mostly down here, right? In the car collection here in Scottsdale.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he actually had that needed restoration. To be honest, I don't know. I think that the cars that I know that he had, I think were all in pretty good shape. So I'm not sure if he had anything out for restoration, to be honest, but I assume they would be finished if soon.
Interesting question. So, guys, anything you'd like to say before we sign off to readers?
Order a book from Poison Pen.
That's right.
I didn't pay you for that. That's amazing.
And here's a good one.
Right there.
Well, I really do thank you. And again, I apologize to those of you waiting for your books that it's going to be a little bit more of a wait. But along with everything else that's characteristic of this pandemic, the entire shipping system has slowed down dramatically. So things that used to take just a day or two now take several days. So we've had to learn to be patient. And we hope our customers will be too. This has been great to visit with you. Let's do it again, Dirk, with the next author. It'd be terrific. And Robin, stay in touch and let us know what's going on with your research. Okay?
I will.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye.